All right.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture, and we are back in the saddle once again for another season. And I have a sponsor for this episode, and this episode is sponsored by my friend Paul Gomez, who has an exciting new book out with masterful art by San Espanina, Gargoyles vs. Demons in an epic battle, and every story has a beginning. This one starts before that. It is prequel to Aurora. It's now available on Kickstarter. I actually am a backer of this book, and I'm super excited for it. And I can tell you one thing about Paul, and I'm not being paid to say this, but he does deliver his books to you. So if you are concerned about not getting your book, Paul will get you your book, and there's reasonable pricing with all of that. But that's pretty much his book. It's going to be a great book. I'm super excited for it. And he's almost fully funded, which is really cool too. I think he's like $70 away from fully funding. So definitely check it out, everybody. I can't recommend it enough. And if you want to know more about that book, Thursday, he's coming on this show, so we're going to be talking about it massively, and I will read his ad purposely because I think it'll be funny. But anyway, enough about that, because I have with me comic creator J.D. Calderon, I think for like the fourth time. But I think we've only released 3 interviews.
Okay. Well, I think second time.
Maybe it's the second time. I don't know. Everything gets blended together. It's so weird now. But welcome back to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. But I wanted to mention about that guy, Paul Gomez. I had him on my show, and let me tell you, he was the most he was great. Paul is a fantastic guy. I like that guy. He'll be back on my show on the 16th. So there you go.
Oh, he's great. He's a great creator. He's a fun creator. He's got a bunch of fun stuff coming out. But enough about Paul. This is not about Paul. God damn it. This is about you and what you got going on. And obviously, you have the 3rd volume of the Oswald Chronicles currently being funded on Kickstarter. And there's a lot of stuff with the Oswald Chronicles. I get a little confused because there's volumes 1, 2, and now we're on 3. There's been a bunch of stories, main stories. There's been some side stories. I think there's been some prequel stuff as well. So what is the basic premise of the Oswald Chronicles for those who don't know anything about it, are hearing about it for the first time, seeing this interview, and they're going to be hearing about a mouse in like 30 seconds?
The basic through line is the smallest creature, right? The smallest creature that's around can have an effect, a much bigger effect than what they are. Okay, so whether it be on society, the world, whatever, right? So that's what the basic through line is, right? Oswald is a mouse who is sentient, right? And he is the bridge between 2 worlds, between the world of magic and the world of reality, or the world of mankind, right? So he bridges these 2 worlds. So he interacts in his world. He has the Fae and he has humanity. He lives in the middle of Manhattan. He lives on Park Avenue. He lives on 53rd Street and Park. He lives on one of the malls. If you've ever been on the Park Avenue, you'll see there's a Meridian, and it's a grass covered, have flowers, all kinds of things. And Oswald lives on one of those, right? And he is destined to become the greatest sorcerer of our time. And the thing is if when we first introduced him in my first day, right, we see him just as a nascent mouse, learning how to read, learning how to write, learning how to speak, right? Becoming friends with a little girl who teaches him how to read and write. And then he goes on to his next adventure, passing queens and making homes, where he comes across magic for the first time. And he learns how to manipulate it a little bit. And he realizes that he has a little bit of a knack for it, right? And he helps out some other people. He makes more friends, and he gets involved with Diane and Ordith, who end up, or like 2 of his guardians. And they represent light and dark. So the Fae, the Seelie and Unseelie courts, right? So there's those 2 characters that are involved in that. And then we move on to this story, which is the one that's currently up on Kickstarter. And mind you, all of these books are available on the campaign, so you can pick them all up as 1, 2, 3, however you want to do it. But in the current one, we're introduced to another race. They're called the Calcians, and their story is different. Their story is they're at war with another race called the Grogs, right? And the Grogs, they've stolen something from them, an ancient artifact. It's a key, right? It was called the Kirchner key. And this key is the key to a lock that the Calcians have, because their 2 races came together thousands of years ago to create a piece of magic that allows them to be invisible to humanity. Okay, So these two races are bound by this pact. And the pact is that the Calcians keep the actual artifact, but it's locked. And the Grogs have the key for it. So if they ever wanted to get to the artifact, they had to come together, negotiate, go in and do whatever they got to do, but all under equal basis. The Calcians were doing great, but of course you always have some schmuck that's like, we're doing great, but we could be doing a little bit better. So they go over there and they find where the key is at, and they end up stealing the key. And the Grogs are pissed, and they're going after them, and they all end up on Oswald's Mall, where he's at on 53rd and Park Avenue, and he's like, who are you crazy people? What are you doing here? And through the Calcians, they're a race of magic users. They end up teaching Oswald structured magic. Okay, so they teach him like just really like the way you would learn in school, right? And he learned how to what's called scrolling, which is their most difficult form of magic, which is literally just writing magic in the air or whatever. But usually it starts out on paper. Then the more powerful you become, or the more adept you become, you can write it in air, and eventually the most adept, you can think it into reality. You don't even have to write it down. So Oswald eventually attains that later on in the series.
Yeah, so let's kind of break this down a little bit, because obviously, I mean, Oswald, this is, I think, a few months later after really dealing with, the Queen and the Orc Queen, and kind of peace has returned, and Oswald is going along his merry life and enjoying himself, and things have sort of calmed down. He's enjoying his world, and then this shit starts happening, for lack of a better word. And the Calcians wind up on his lawn. The Grogs wind up on his lawn, and they surround, and then he sort of has to, make a decision, and somewhat of a war sort of starts breaking out, and he starts sort of having to pick a side and figure out where to put the key and how to maybe even maintain peace. And so what is that like? Because this is kind of, he's made choices before, but now he really is forced and brought into a war on legitly his front door, legitly his front door, and also in his home territory. And he also has to kind of figure out, hey, why are they doing this? What is the rationale? And what is even at stake here? Because it's very complicated. And then he has to play peacekeeper and decide and figure it out. And it's kind of a maturing point for him in a lot of ways. And so what is that like to really write that in there and get this going on? Because if he's going to become the greatest sorcerer in the world eventually, I mean, he needs to have wisdom, knowledge, and a variety of other things. This is kind of that first step.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's funny, when I originally wrote this story, right, there was one story before this I had written. It was called The Park Avenue Mall, right? And then I've written this story. And because originally the story, Oswald wasn't, the stories weren't supposed to be based on Oswald. Oswald was supposed to be just a scribe, and he was just supposed to be like a crypt keeper type character. He would just write down the stories for everybody. Right. But then, like any character, he took over, I guess his name, it was always called the Oswald Chronicles. So it was always like, he was destined to just take it over. So it just became about him, and the story just got bigger and bigger. But yeah, it's definitely a thing about him maturing, because it's his first time being exposed to magic. And then he's exposed to these other races as well. He's exposed to the Grogs, he's exposed to the Calcians. And for him, it's a thing of, he doesn't want to see anybody. He doesn't want, despite a bunch of people dying, he doesn't want anybody to die. And he wants to do the right thing, right? And he's going to always try to do the right thing as to how he feels. This is what he feels is correct, right? And even if he has to betray someone, right, he's going to always try to do the right thing, even though you may see it as a betrayal, right? He doesn't look at it that way. He's like, look, I'm helping you, right? Later on comes another story, right, where we can see, like, as far as like where his mind is at, right? This story, I write it from a third person's perspective, right? And Oswald had done something, right, that had caused an entire nation, well, not nation, probably a village, a large one, to be decimated. Okay. But the thing is, though, is Oswald did it because it was either that or billions died, right? but the effect on this person from this village, right, doesn't see it that way, right? Or they're not on in the know of everything that happened, right? So they're after Oswald. When they're seeing all of, eventually Oswald causes a lot of destruction, right? Because he's after something, right? And he gets into a lot of fights with a lot of dangerous entities, and Oswald doesn't care. He's just like, fuck it, I got the knowledge, I got the power, we're gonna do this. Right? He just goes for it, right? And you know, and it's just to see it from that other perspective, right? Where you just see, you're like, what is this thing and what's going on here, you know? But yeah, it's definitely like, but this is his nascent stage still. We're still early in the story.
Yeah, and let's even talk about that and dive into this story a little bit, because it definitely opens up his world.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's dealt with other things prior to this a little bit, but now he's dealing with two races that clearly have a pact that was broken, and
Mm-hmm.
there has to be blood to some degree. There has
Right.
to be some peace agreement, some idea of, hey, what why did you break it, and how do we get it back? How do we get
Mm-hmm.
this fixed? Can it be fixed? Or what decision do I have to make as an individual to protect myself? And also, what side am I going to choose on? Who's right, who's wrong in this
Mm-hmm.
environment? And it's really interesting because obviously there are consequences for actions.
Oh yeah.
And
Right.
he's also gaining knowledge that there's something beyond his world. There's
Mm-hmm.
other creatures out there. There's other species out there. And what is that like for him? Because there's also an eye opener in a lot of ways. And he's also learning new magic and learning other things, and really, I guess, growing, not just in magical power, strength, choice making, but also in knowledge, and realizing that, hey, there's so much more beyond where I am currently at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's all of that. He's growing, and he's, discovering, like, who he is, what's his path, right? And where he's gonna wind up. Because by the end of the story, he ends up becoming a practitioner of magic, right? So that's his change that happens in this story. I don't want to give away too much of what happens as far as the war between the Calcians and the Grogs and what happens, but that he has a definitive effect of what occurs between the two races.
Yeah, and to even dive into that too, and not so much the story, but I'm a huge fan of Ruby. And
Mm,
Ruby Volumes 1 and 2, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, was very childish, was very fun. The opening episode
mm,
of Volume 2 was a gigantic food fight in the
yeah.
cafeteria with like magic, and it was great. The animation was fun. I used
Mm,
to do a panel at anime cons, and I love playing that clip because everybody in the room loves that clip too. And everybody's like, this is awesome. And you can see everybody's face is just enjoyment. And
mm,
it seems to me that when we look at, volume 1 and 2 of Oswald and the Oswald Chronicles, the series is slowly evolving, but clearly we are at a definitive stage now where we are going into, because I don't think it was ever like a kid's book, but I felt
mm,
like maybe it was like teens, and now we're kind of
mm,
going young adult a little bit. And what it's now like, because I think it's a big mistake sometimes in comics, TV, and literature that you don't evolve with your reader. And I think
mm,
that's a real problem, where if you start a reader off at the age of 13 and you keep the book at 13, 14, 15, but you're putting out 5 books over 6 years, the reader who came in at 13 is now 19. And so
right.
what is that like for you? Because it seems that we're evolving, and you're trying to, keep up with saying, hey, there's readers who are coming in at a certain age, but now they're 2, 3, 4 years older. And
Mm,
obviously they have a little bit more wisdom. They've been exposed to more of the world, and you need to, I guess, raise the level up a little bit.
mm.
And
No,
not you as a writer, but just in society. I want to make that crystal clear.
right. No. I mean, that's interesting because it's funny. Like I don't know if I told you this the last time I was here, but I started the series, right? I started it in the middle. Okay. So like I started it with this story called The Park Avenue Mall, and then I wrote this one. This was the story that's currently up on Kickstarter. Is the second story I wrote in the series, and then I just continued. And then what had happened was I had ideas of things that needed to happen. But I was like, so what I started doing was I started writing stories that were way in the future. Okay. And I started jumping around in his timeline, writing all these different stories, right? And my friend Steve, he says, you know, you're like a master of nonlinear storytelling, because he was like, I get it, but I don't know what, you know, how does this all tie together, right? So that's when I wrote My First Day, right? And that's the very first story. And I started writing, and then I wrote Passing Queens and Making Homes. And now I'm moving into a linear state with the story. And what's funny is it's Passing Queens and Making Homes. Oh no, My First Day, Passing Queens and Making Homes. Then it's a story called A Few Inches Taller, and then it's this story. Okay, A Few Inches Taller. It's a story between him and his neighbor Ordith, who's one of his guardians, and it's also available on this campaign. I have it on as an extra, so you can get issues 1 and 2. And that's a story where Oswald is just in the middle of this fight between this ogre and this troll, and he's just trying to help out his friend, you know. And he ends up talking to Diane, and you know, there's a whole thing that happens, and yeah, and it's just a matter of now just trying to get it all together, and then just move it along, you know. And here's something I did for everybody, and I'll be mailing these out again. I started this with my last campaign is with these things, right? So those are checklists. Okay, so this is a checklist of all the stories and in order. So if you're ever confused, you go to the checklist and you're just like, okay, let's just go down the checklist, and you'll know exactly.
Let's actually talk about that too, because I'm a huge Zenescope fan, and for the longest time, and I think it was the biggest and fairest criticism of them, is there was no checklist, no order, no bio on any of their characters. And they just went through a major website rehaul maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and they put a bunch of that stuff up together. Because when you have legitimately 90 issues of Robin Hood, and you have 90 issues or 70 issues of Van Helsing, where in the hell do you start? Because it's hard to tell where you're supposed to start. Do you start in this trilogy? Do you start in this trilogy? Do you start on issue 1 of this one? Which one came before what? And you know, it doesn't overall change the story. I mean, obviously, if you're being introduced to Robin for the first time, you know, there's certain things that are going to define her. But it's very important, I think, that once you have a lot of content, that you really provide somewhat of a guidance form, saying, hey, look, this is a jumping in point. This is not a jumping in point. You're going to be confused where this is issue 5, but it really is sort of a new jumping in point. Versus issue 3, you're in the middle of a dogfight or a gunfight. You're in the middle of a magic fight, and you're going to be confused on what the hell's going on because you missed the setup. And so what is that like in that idea? Because I think that's brilliant in so many ways and so helpful, because I'm one of the people that'll be confused. And I do research on every one of my guests, and I'm still confused.
No, I got you. What's funny is because I've had people ask me, and then there have been times I would just post it on my website, on the Oswald Chronicles website. I would post it, but as things move on, you know, it moves down the list. It goes down the scroll, right? So that's why I was like, you know what? I finally have to make a definitive list, right? That I'm going to mail out to everyone with the Kickstarters. So I'm like, you know, here you go. Here's, you know, and here's the thing with his life. He has 3 portions of his life. He has his first life. He has his first life, which is basically on the mall, right? Then he has his life in Dream, because he eventually goes into Dream. And he spends the equivalent of about 80 years in Dream, okay? And that's where he grows up. So when he, imagine stepping into Dream at the mental age of a 20, 21, maybe a 19 to 20-year-old, right? And when you step out, 2 weeks later, you have the knowledge of someone who's lived 80 years. Okay. So he was a husband, a battle mage, an emperor, a conqueror, he's done all these crazy things while he was in Dream, right? And a father, grandfather, the whole nine yards. But but when he comes out 2 weeks later, like he was in a self-induced coma, and when he comes out, he is, you know, back on the mall in his 20-year-old body, but he's had this huge existence and he has this huge knowledge base. Like I said, that's a little bit later on. It's the image that's right behind me is him getting married to his wife in Dream, right?
So let's talk about that too, because obviously, I mean, this is massively expansive.
Yes.
Where we are at the beginning, he didn't really go into Dream yet,
No.
and that's kind of next. And then also, I mean, you could play a bunch of different ways with that. You could have flashbacks to things of that nature, and that could be set up extremely linear. It could be set up as, you know, a side thing. You could have a whole issue called the wedding issue as legitimately a side issue of just him getting ready for his wedding in Dream, and it could be a great thing. And then you could do, like, you know, run it like Nightwing and Starfire perfectly.
Nice.
In case anybody didn't know, I'm a huge Teen Titans fan. But what is that like? Because it obviously gives you a lot of options, because we have the beginning stuff going on, as you just stated, but then Dream can be set up in any which way, directly, indirectly, flashbacks, sporadically, and then because it's only 2 weeks in real time, but it's 80 years in Dreamland.
Right.
And so what is this like? Because it's a huge sandbox, I guess, is where I'm going with this.
Yeah, it is. So what's funny is someone had asked me, they said, why did you do it? I said, well, you know, he was in New York, right? He's surrounded by fairies. He's surrounded by trolls. He's surrounded by all these different races, right? I was like, and you know what? It just wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to contain the insanity that was in my head. So I had to move in a sphere where I could do anything. Right. And that's what that was. It was just like, well, I really gotta, like, you know, break them out. And that's what that was. So, you know, and I
have a different reaction to that. I'll be very honest. My reaction is saying, like, it's just expanding a sandbox, and it's also freeing up a problem. So, like, I am not a good world builder. I'm writing a comic right now, and then I'm 4 pages, guys. It's going to be a while for a lot of reasons. A lot of stuff's going on. I'm writing a script. It's going to be edited, but my goal is to write the whole 5 issues and then get the art on that side of it. But one of the things is that it's a small world, and I purposely wanted in a small world. And, you know, it's relatively in like a small, you know, it's a city, but there's not much characters, and I'm more focused on the concept and dialogue. Because what this is, you know, people build big worlds and expansive worlds and smart worlds, you know, it's fun. It's kind of cool. And let's be realistic, anime is like that in a lot of ways. And this is how this book feels. It feels way more like a manga anime vibe to it than necessarily a comic.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's funny. Like, I don't know if you've seen some of the artwork. If you look, there's Jade Gonzalez. She's the my main artist, right? She's the one whose interior artwork is on My First Day, Passing Queens, all of those. But a few inches taller is illustrated by Aurelio Tillis. And what's funny is if you look at Jade's work, it's very manga, right? It looks very anime-ish. If you look at Aurelio, he looks very manga as well. A different style of manga, but it's just really funny to see it. It's just, you know, both of them are in that sphere. You know, I know she equates her style to European comics and manga. And I know for Aurelio, he's out of Indonesia. So yeah, his stuff is just going to be probably straight manga.
And then even to go into the world side of things, because one of the things I think is one of the biggest shames is that if you put a lot of effort into your world, and then you have, you know, a story that the world starts and the world ends in that story, and you can't go back into that world. And with Oswald, you very much can go back into that world. I mean, if you have 80 years of Dream, you know, you could tell it straight up linear, and you could do it over 6 issues if you wanted to. But then there's a bunch of side stuff that could be revisited and a bunch of stuff like that. And I think this is one of the biggest things with creators right now. This is just me reading. As somebody who's a fan of comics, as somebody who talks to a lot of creators, I see a lot of creators who don't know who build beautiful worlds and amazing worlds, but they don't know how to leave it open. And I think it's a shame. I mean, you know Pat Shand, right?
Yes.
So Pat did a great job with, Gangster Ass Barista, which takes place in the world of Destiny, New York.
Right.
And obviously it's cool because he left that world open, but it doesn't interfere with Destiny, New York. And I think that's something that is really a nice touch that Pat doesn't necessarily get credit for in a lot of ways. And I feel like you're in a similar vein with Oswald, where you're not going to go introduce a new series into the Oswald Chronicles at the moment, but there's stories that you could revisit in Oswald that are only going to enhance what is done and what can be done and give more context. And that's what I love about what you've done with the dream stuff that you're describing. And obviously I haven't read it yet. So, and I'm looking forward to reading it at some point, but like, what is that like? Because it's almost the gift that keeps on giving.
It's fun. It's funny because within that dream series, I have there's a 6-year period, right, where Oswald takes a walkabout, right. So he's in what they refer to as the hinterland of dreams, and he's just like off in dreamland, just walking around, right. Something happens, and he's very disillusioned. He discovers where his source of magic comes from, right, and he finds out that it's very destructive, right? He didn't realize it. The Calcians, when he first learns from them, they tell him, they says, you have to be very careful. He says, because there's a cost for magic, right? If you're going to use it, you're going to use some of your soul. You're going to use some of your mana, whatever you want to refer to it as, right? Oswald's like, okay, but he never feels the pain of what they refer as the Calcians refer to as the draw, meaning you drawing your energy out of you to cast these spells. Oswald never felt that. Okay. And then he finally discovers why. And while he's in dream, he's in a war, right? And his people, the Mar, are going to be destroyed, right? There's a massive army in front of him, and he casts this huge spell to destroy the other army. And it's a massive spell. And then he looks up and he sees, he's in dream himself, but he has this flash of visions where he sees all of these people dying on Earth, right? All of these humans who are not waking up, because what he does whenever he casts a spell is he doesn't use his energy. He uses all the energy of the life force around him. Okay. So if he casts a big spell in a city like New York City, like, he might be costing every person in the city 10 seconds of their life, 2 seconds of their life, 20 minutes of their life, so on and so forth. Okay. So he never realized that up until that point. So then it caused him at that point to try to relearn how to cast magic and use magic. So that's why when he comes out of dream, he's very stingy in the way he uses his magic. Like, he can destroy just about anybody who's in front of him, but he won't do it because the cost, he knows a lot of other people are going to die if he does that. So he learns how to redirect magic. He learns how to save magic. That's one of his big things, is if someone casts a spell at him, he learns how to trap it. He learns how to manipulate that energy, and he learns how to recast that spell without having to use any more energy. Right. So yeah, so it's one of those things where it's just like, the character just evolves in that fashion. I don't mind saying that story because that story is already put out. Because so getting back to the question about the dream thing, right? So the 100 artists, I have a project called the 100 artists, my 100 artist project. I want to work with 100 different artists on 100 different stories, and they're all shorts. So it's like 1 page, 2 page, 3 page, 8 pages. At most it'll be 16 pages, but it's going along that. And I think I've already worked like 7 or 8 artists. I got a long way to go, but it happens all in dreams. So I can do it within that milieu.
Let's actually talk about that too, because one of the coolest things, I don't know if it was a 100 artist project. I'm a big fan of what Topps is doing, which is the 100 project, where they produce 100 cards with a bunch of different artists and playing around with them. It's a really cool concept that Topps is doing, and they're really cool cards, and it's fun. It's fun. It's a fun take on baseball cards. but I think Marvel's done this. I think IDW's done this, where they take a character and they find 50 or 60 or 70 artists. And it's kind of fun to do.
Yeah.
You know, what is your interpretation of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? What is your interpretation of this? How did you view this character? How did you view Deadpool? And so what is that like for you? Because you created Oswald. And now you're working with 7, 8, 9, 10 artists, and then 20 artists, you go to 30 and 40 and 50. Everybody's going to have a different idea for a story. Everybody's going to have a different idea on how it should be done, or even what something should look like. And it's kind of cool to see your character being interpreted in different ways, because I would imagine that keeps you fresh. So it's cool. I know that person A can do it this way, and person D does it in a style that hasn't been done, which allows you as a writer say that story can now be done this way, or that story can be put on the table. Because sometimes I feel in comics that a story is written, but the artist is not there yet to deliver it.
Right.
And so when you have 100 people in your bullpen, or you're getting up to 100, you know, you can sort of put somebody into, you know, pitch the inning, for lack of a better word, to use a baseball reference.
It's interesting. Like I said, I mean, I did it because, you know, I'm insane, right? So this is like, you have to be a little nuts to do something like this, because it's listen, finding one artist that you could work with on a regular basis, that's hard. Okay, that's hard. Finding 2 is really hard. Finding 100, bonkers. Okay, just absolute insanity. As far as stories, I write all the stories, so that I don't have to worry about. But yeah, it's because there's also the thing is I like styles. I like funky styles, right? Sometimes my wife, she gets on my case a little bit, because I'll hire people and she's like, why did you know, I'm like, look, it's not for the main story. It's for like a 4-page thing or like an 8-page thing. And I like to see weird, funky styles, you know? And that's, sometimes I don't think, not everybody gets that, you know. It's like, I like, you know, weird, you know, I'm a Sam Keith fan, right? Like when Sam Keith was drawing Wolverine, I'm like, look at that thing, at Popeye arms, right? The big, you know, the big things coming out of his head, right? And when he was drawing the Hulk, right? So, you know, when you see guys like Sam Keith and there's many others, Mike Mignola, right? When Mike Mignola was working over at Marvel and DC, not Hellboy, there was his own thing, but when he was working at Marvel and DC, you know, I mean, you look at it, you're like, what the hell is that, right? Half the time, I love it. You know, I love it. I love the way, you know, when you see these different styles. And sometimes I feel things have become a little too homogenized, right? Like there's like one big house style you see coming out of Marvel and DC, and sometimes I prefer to see like something a little different every time.
I mean, I'll throw you something that might be an unpopular opinion. I think there's a house style coming out of indie. I really do. I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, DC and Marvel have a house style. Image has a house style, and you know, I mean, it's weird. I just picked up Sam Payne, and I love Sam Payne's work. And that is very much new school, you know, pinup style, and it's such a funky style. I picked up 2 covers he did. Such a funky style where it's playful, it's fun, it's that, you know, sort of over exaggerated hips, you know, pinup, and I think that catches my eye, and it makes me want to stop and buy his book, because Archie covers, and I'm not a huge Archie fan. I'm not anti-Archie, but I don't stop for an Archie cover. You know what I mean? Like but those 2 that he just dropped are really, really cool. And I think this is one of the things that funky styles, definitely, at least for me, I've stopped on books on Kickstarter, just scrolling through, being like, that style is weird. Let me check out what this is. And I don't know how to feel about it, but honestly, at this point on Kickstarter, you need to have something that's different. You need to have different rewards. You need to have a different concept in your book. You need to be priced better sometimes. And you need to have something that is weird in your book. I mean, there was a book that didn't fund, but the cover of the manga of it, it was jazz, was awesome. It was that new school pinup, you know, thick style. And I was like, man, this cover looks awesome. And I haven't seen anything like this in a while. And it made me stop. And that's half the battle, right? So
Yeah.
doing that funky stuff, I mean, I feel that kind of says, cool, this is different than everybody else's shit.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, I could be the outlier here, but I definitely get drawn in when people do different things.
Yeah, no, so do I. Like I said, I mean, I enjoy those different styles. But what's funny is I know, like, I'm not the norm, right? That's what I know. I know not everybody enjoys that sort of thing, because I've heard people say they can't stand Mike Mignola's style. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, are you crazy? But it's the same thing with Jack Kirby, right? When I was a kid, I didn't appreciate Jack Kirby. It wasn't until much later in life that I started really looking at his work, and I'm like, wow, this dude is a bona fide master of his craft, and I seriously saw that when I looked at his pencils. When you see his pencils, it's just mind-blowingly incredible what that man was doing, and at the speed he was doing it at, right? So yeah, sometimes it takes you a little while, you know what I mean? Because you grow up, appreciating things. I grew up like John Byrne, George Perez, Mike Golden, and many others, right? And then you grow and you grow and you grow, and then you get introduced to someone like Walter Simonson, right? And then you see Walter for a while, then you're introduced to Mike Mignola.
Signature, right?
Right. Yep.
Dinosaur Signature. Dinosaur Signature. It's so good. If anybody's never had Walter Simonson sign a book, he signs it and it's like a dinosaur. It's the best thing ever to watch.
Yep. And and if you ask him, he'll tell you the story behind it. It's because he likes drawing dinosaurs, and he wanted to make sure he would always draw a dinosaur, and that's why he signs like that. So yeah, Walter's mad cool, really nice guy. But yeah, man, I mean, I love, like I said, I just love different styles.
So let me ask you a follow-up question, because I'm now actually curious. Do you also feel that, because I'm looking back now on certain styles, and obviously I'm 30, so I'm a little bit younger than you are in comics. I grew up with some weird stuff. I mean, my first graphic novel stuff was Jeff Johns on the Teen Titans, which was a good time for comics. But I also grew up in a manga, era where I was buying manga every weekend, and my parents used to bring me to Barnes & Noble and bought me manga. And it was awesome. Those are the good days. Those are the good days. Yep. This is how I know my parents are decent people.
Yes, good people.
They're still alive. So they're still good people.
Nice.
But one of the things is that, do you feel sometimes it also takes a while for people to realize, I get what that style was trying to do, and I now appreciate it? Because I feel like in the now, sometimes we don't appreciate what people can do, what they're attempting to do. And this is how I feel about Steph Wilson. I mean, maybe Steph Wilson's not the best example, but Steph Wilson's style, I think in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, is going to be looked on very differently. We're going to be like, I get that this was trying to redefine and bring back this new school, exaggerated, Betty Boop style stuff, but in a modern era. And I think it's somewhat being recognized as that, and people like it, but I don't think people fully appreciate what Steph has done in a certain way. And so do you feel that's also part of the issue, where in the now it's sort of hard to determine what somebody is actually doing and what they're trying to do, versus when we look back 10 years later, it's like, that's what this was trying to do, and this is what it really meant, and it actually changed and pivoted, not the whole industry, but a piece of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. But I think it's not even so much a thing of now. That's a thing of always. Because like I said, when I was a kid, I didn't appreciate certain things. Right. And as you grow older, you start to appreciate other things. Right. And the same thing, it could be with Steph. Is like, it's one of those things where it's like, he's doing a certain thing. You're going to either appreciate it or don't appreciate it. I actually like it. I think it's hilarious what he's doing. And it's growth, right? With Steph, I mean, the one thing I appreciate from the first time, I think I started seeing Steph's work like 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And the one thing I appreciate is I've seen him grow in his art. Like I've seen it change slightly for the better. And that's the one thing I really like, is that I see him getting better as an artist. And I really, really enjoy that, because it's so fine, those changes. I love it.
I really came across Steph because of Chuck Pino and the Hooters variant that he did. And I thought
Right.
that was pretty funny. And I thought it was funny because it could be Hooters or Looters, but they both apply. And I
Right.
thought it was a fun, you know, cover. And then I've also, witnessed other covers, and I think Steph's humor has actually gotten better, and his concepts have gotten better in a lot of ways. Where you have one bat when she's clothed, and you have all these other bats when she's unclothed, and I
Right.
think it's brilliant, and I think it's very cool, and I think that there's little touches that really, as you were saying, definitely have made improvements, and I don't think it was any bad. I also think that people have gotten it. And I think when he first started doing it, people didn't necessarily get it, but I think people have become more attuned to it. I also think that there's been big campaigns that he's been on that have really helped. But I think it's very interesting, and it's one of those styles that I think in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, people are like, oh, I get what this was doing. And I actually think it's going to open up a lot of doors for a bunch of other people to do other things. And I think it's actually going to wind up in interior, and I think we're going to get that style more in interiors. I think when we look back, Steph Wilson's going to be one of the people that was sort of the pioneer who helped to crack that door open a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll see. It's like, look, like when, like I said, I was growing up, and I grew up with Byrne and Perez and Golden, right? And then when Todd McFarlane showed up, it was like, wow, because it was so different, right? Because you got Byrne, right, and also John Buscema, right, and guys of that era, and then you have somebody like Todd McFarlane, and that style was just funky crazy, right? Because like Jim Lee, as good as he is, Jim Lee is, Neil Adams, but with, just a little different.
I could use a WWE analogy for Jim Lee. It's a famous promo. I mean, it's missionary. I'm sorry. I'm a Roman Reigns fan, and that's his take on John Cena. It's missionary over and over again.
Right.
And nothing against Jim Lee, but it's kind of traditional DC. It's good. I don't think Jim Lee is like the poster of DC and is arguably one of the best ever. But it's not like it's not like it's funky. It doesn't stray off like Todd McFarlane.
Yeah,
and I think that's what it goes down to. If we were to go, Todd McFarlane is like Sami Zayn, and Jim Lee is Roman Reigns. There you go.
All right. Well, if there was ever to be a poster person for DC, I would say it was Jose Luis Garcia Lopez.
I don't know who that is.
He's. Let me put it to you like this: he's so good. He's the only person that could fill in for George Perez. That's how good he is. Go.
I'm gonna have to look this person up now.
Yeah. He's the guy they had do all the style guides for DC. He did all the original style guides for DC. He's an older gentleman, still around, still drawing. I saw him in Miami a few years ago. Must have probably in his 70s by that point, but he's still drawing. And the guy, master. It's unfortunate he hasn't drawn more than, hasn't drawn more things. But I think he spent a lot of his career doing like advertising art because it just paid more. But if there was ever one, that's him. But if you ever see like DC art on like a box or something, it's usually his. It's not always his, but it usually is his. Yeah.
The last DC that I've seen on a box was when they had DC characters on like catalog cereal as superheroes, and it was awesome. It was like Cocoa Puffs was the Flash. It was hilarious.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, if they had the actual Flash on it, that was probably his artwork. So
they have like the freaking Pelican who's the Cocoa Puffs guy in like a Flash costume. It was the funniest thing ever. I didn't even look at the box. I legitimately just put it on my right next to my stove, and every time I went to work, I would stare at it before I left. It was awesome. It was a great piece of art. It was amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's the funniest thing ever.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
But I think it's the funniest thing. It's probably not for somebody else, but my sense of humor is all wacky, and I'm well aware of that. But I thought it was funny. And then Ivan Reis was on a cover, but Ivan Reis is a beast.
Yeah, that dude is incredible too.
But enough about that. I do want to talk about A Few Inches Taller.
Oh, okay.
That's the other side in this as well, where obviously Oswald's caused problems.
Well, it's his neighbor. His neighbor is he's in a fight. He's in a familial feud with an ogre, right? So he's a troll and he's an ogre, and they're in a fight. And they this ogre was part of a tribe that defeated and destroyed most of Ordith's original tribe, and Ordith got revenge by the few remaining members of his tribe. They went out and they slaughtered his tribe, right? So there's only the two of them left. So, and they're still fighting after all these years. Ordith has moved on in his life. He's taken on the responsibility of being Oswald's guardian, right? Which is like, a big honor amongst his people, amongst the trolls. And this ogre, Torikine, he's not giving up. He still wants to kill Ordith. He's like, you killed my brother, you killed my tribe. I don't care what you're doing, and I'm gonna massacre you, right? And Oswald's caught in the middle again. He's like, yo, what's going on, man? Like, why is everybody trying to beat each other up and hit each other over the head with rocks? What is this? So basically that story establishes his relationship with Ordith, right? And their friendship. And it shows this very brutal reality of the world that they're living in, as to how brutal it is between the warring factions of the world. Oswald is not necessarily involved in that, but it shows those other facets, so that, there are things that are final and, and, and it's always not sugarcoated,
Yeah, and I just think this story is important because obviously you said it, where it shows that this world is brutality in a lot of ways. It's brutal. There are consequences for actions. It's not happy endings. Obviously, if these are the last two, their tribes left, clearly one killed, a bunch of people, the other killed the other bunch of people, and now here you go. And what do you do in that circumstance? And obviously choices have been made, and you got to pay for your consequences. And also, how do you get peace if you can get peace, or does the feud just continue until somebody dies?
Right.
And so it's I think it just provides a lot of context to the world, and knowing it's going to sneak right back in somehow.
Oh yeah. There's, like I said, it all ties in weirdly. The one thing that I did in last year was I actually finished the series. I finished writing Oswald. So I wrote the final story, right, in the series. And that felt
a dream, right? It was all a dream, right? It was all a hallucination, right?
Well, no, but yeah. But it's for me it was a huge relief. It was just like, oh, okay. I got this massive thing off my chest,
So let me ask this. Did you write the last issue, or do you have the whole series written out at this point? Or is it just that you have the first and the last issue written and now you got to get to the last issue, if that makes any sense?
No, that makes plenty of sense. No, I have the whole thing written out. I have the whole thing written out. Yeah. Let me, I don't know if I showed these to you the last time, but
it's a whole stack, guys.
So that's, I don't know, 5 of the last, like these are, what's in these books is the final 5 stories of the series. I wouldn't say issues, stories, because they're arcs. You know what I mean? Because Some issues are one shots. Some of them are two. Some of them are four. Some of them are eight. You know, so it just depends on the story. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and I wrote all those on the subway, coming back and forth from work. So it's just like I would just be on the subway just writing. So yeah.
So what is that like that you have it all planned out? Because that seems crazy to me. Like obviously, I mean, I'm writing my first, and I'm finding time in between everything else that I'm doing in my personal life, and so, but I don't even think I'm ever gonna be at that stage where I have an ending plan. I mean, I want to write a series that I want to just keep it going forever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to end it because I'm a big One Piece guy, and he gave an interview, and he said, "I only want to write one series,
Right.
and this is it. This is
Mm-hmm.
One Piece is the only one I want to write and finish with. I'm not interested in creating another one. Whether that changes or not, I don't know. But what is that like to know that you have it all written? I mean, to me, it seems so like finalization. Like it would bother me as an
Mm-hmm.
individual to know that now we have a beginning, middle, end all written. Like I feel like, cool. Now it's a chore to get it all arted out.
You know, it's funny. I don't consider it a chore to get it all arted out. You know what I mean? The only part that's chore like is making sure I have the funds to get it arted out. Not the actual getting of the art, because I love that. I love getting the artwork, and I love negotiating. Like right now, I have two artists working on two separate stories. I'm about to start working with a third artist in a third story. So, you know, and the thing is, here's something. So in total, there are 47 Oswald stories. Okay, 7 of them are pure prose. I will not be making them into comic books. Okay, pure prose. I just won't. I will not be converting them. I will not be changing them. So that means there's what is it? There's 39. What is it? What did I say? 47? No. So there's 40 stories that are comic book stories, right? And I think I've completed 13 of them. Like they've already been illustrated. So I still got, you know, another 27 to go.
I guess the way I view it, and maybe I'm different, is that to me, it seems that every time I complete one, I'm getting closer to exiting this world. And that would make me sad as a creator. And like I feel like that's why it would be like a chore. Like I'm like, great, now I'm getting closer to the end, inch by inch by inch, and it's like cut by 1,000 deaths. And it would drive me mad because I would want to be like, maybe I'll wait 2 years to release it because I don't want my baby to grow up and go to college, get married, and have grandkids, and that's how I would view it. And so that's why, like, I don't mind planning 5 issues at a time, but I don't want to, if I know I'm gonna have 50 or 100, like I don't want to plan that far out ahead because I don't want to let my baby go. It's like I want to let my little baby girl go out into the world so quickly. It's a scary place.
No, you know, it's funny. I was like, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the ending. I'm looking forward to, like, you know, finishing their final word balloon and printing their final book. You know, I'm looking forward to that. You know, it's something that you know, I don't know if you're. I mean, I've said it before. Is like, you know, my big thing, my big ambition is to have them all big giant omnibuses. You know, it's just like, here's a, you know, big Chihuahua killing omnibus. You know, you know, it's like it's a 10 pounds a book.
I don't know. Maybe if I ever get to that point, it's what I'm doing. If I ever get that far, and who knows, maybe I'll do 5 issues, and I'll be done. I don't know, but maybe I'll have a change of heart. But like the way I see it is that, like, yeah, that's just me at the moment. That's where I'm at in my headspace. Is that like I'd be sad, but because it's great that you're done with a story, but it's like I spent a huge chunk of my life doing this, and now I'm done. Kind of sucks. Like I had a blast doing it all this, and now it's like it's not for me to end it. Is my point.
Mind you, I started in 93. Okay, that's when I started. Oswald Chronicles, you know? So, I mean, what year were you born in? You're 30, right?
93.
So there you go. That's how long I've been working on it, you know? So for me, it's because for me, it's the accomplishment of just getting that much work done. I mean, I'm already about 1,500 pages in, you know, actual artwork, you know? And I mean, it's a lot of work. And that was the last time I might be up to 1,600 by this point. So, yeah.
I don't know. I have a different view, but then again, I'm also an outsider, and it could very well be that in 3 years, when potentially I'm 4 or 5 issues in, my opinion might change. But
Mhm.
again, like with this show, I'm almost 500 interviews, maybe even 600 interviews in, and I
Right.
started 10 years ago, and I have no intention of stopping
Mhm.
because I'm gonna probably die doing this. Where I'm gonna be in the middle of an interview and you're just gonna see me collapse. Am I just gonna be like, "You there, Andrew?" It's gonna be great. I don't want to go out any other way. But the
Right.
point is that there's not finalization with this
Mhm.
show. Where I will be 70 and I will be doing this show. I will be 80 and doing this show, and I'll be doing this from hospice with this
Mhm.
show. So there you go. So and it's because I don't want to let it go, and it's like I don't
Yeah.
know, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe I'm the odd one out, but
Yeah. Well, see, my ambition was that I would be done writing it by the time I'm 55. So I'll be turning 54 this year. Um so yeah, so that portion of it has been covered. Now by the time I'm 65, I want to be done with all of the artwork. Okay? So I got 11 years, you know, to get that portion of it done. But the thing is, it's not like I'm going to be finished with writing. I have other things that I'm working on. So, I mean, still have Tall Tales to finish up. I still have to do the third arc on that one. That's another 12 issues there. And then there's other stories that I'm working on. I'm working on something with C. Michael Lanning that'll hopefully come out sometime later on this year. Um,
it's crazy.
and then there are other projects that I want to bring back. There's a project called Dreamweavers, which I really want to bring back. You know, there's something I was doing in the early '90s when I first started, and it'll probably be 8 issues, but I want to finish it. You know, and I spoke to the original artist Matthew, my old partner, and he he'll probably be involved a little bit in it, but hopefully just to do covers and stuff. But he hasn't drawn comics seriously in years. But it's a shame because he's an incredible artist. But yeah, like there's more to do.
Wild. That's wild. But I did want to back out of all this. I'm going to talk about rewards in a second, but
Mm-hmm.
I am curious because you do a lot of trade paperbacks. I
Mm-hmm.
think you've done some floppies too. I
Oh yeah.
think you've taken a break from some floppies for a while. And what is this like? Because the market has changed in a lot of ways, and
Mm-hmm.
it's gone, both directions at the same time. Where there's a huge collector experience on Kickstarter with floppies, a lot of variants, a lot of things like that. But also,
Mm-hmm.
people have come to the conclusion saying there's a huge graphic novel, surgence going on as well, where people want
Mm-hmm.
more content, they want content faster, and they're willing to pay more, or the same amount of money for a graphic
Mm-hmm.
novel, and or what would I like to call a miniature graphic novel, which is 64 pages or 96 pages in sort of
Mm-hmm.
a bound book. And I like to use the term miniature graphic novel because I consider a graphic novel like 120 to 140 pages. I consider
Mm-hmm.
96 pages more than a comic, but
Right.
not a graphic novel. But if it's bound nicely and it looks like a graphic novel, it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of a hybrid. But what has that been like? Because obviously, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would imagine you're trying to get more story out. You're trying to get a full story out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you're also trying to produce a product that makes sense because it might be that if you break up, volume 3 of this book and put it into 2 floppies, it's going to take longer to get out content. It's going to be a pain in the
Mm-hmm.
ass to print it, and it's going to kind of seem floppy in the story and choppy. Not floppy, but choppy in the story because it's not a good breaking point. And it'll also screw up the flow of the book to some degree as well. So what is that like? Because I've seen both directions work really, really well.
Okay, I'll explain my business model, right? And here's one. Here's one where everyone can decide on their own if I've done this correctly or not, right? So basically, my business model is, and this story has already been printed as floppies, so I've already done it like that. I've printed them as floppies, and now this is the trade for it, right? And it's basically a graphic novel because it is one complete story. Thankfully, it's not choppy because I was able to. We have good breakpoints in, so I make sure I go in and I find the proper breakpoints for the story, right? But it's one complete story. But what I'm doing is I got the artist to produce the artwork, right? And it's in black and white, right? And then I print them first as comic books, right? And then once that's done, I produce a trade, right? Later on down the road, we may see these same comics come back in color, right? And they'll come back as single issues in color. And then they'll come back again as a trade paperback, but in color, and then that's how I'm working it, because I've told everybody, it says these things, I mean, I'm sure you've spoken to enough creators, this stuff's not cheap to produce. It's very expensive. So I have to take every opportunity I can take to try to generate as much revenue as I can generate, right? To help, to pay for the artists. I'm literally, listen, I'm funding artists all over the world. I'm trying to get them fed. I'm trying to feed their families, So that's what I'm doing, So yeah, so that's my process, But yeah,
dive into that a little bit too, and not too much about who you're paying, what you're paying, all that stuff. But right. I've said this before, where one of the biggest problems in comics is the C word, and not creativity. Creativity is not the issue; it's cash flow. Cash flow is the issue. Cash flow in my business is one of the biggest problems. I'm going through expansion on eBay, buying, selling, comic books, baseball cards, some Pop Funkos, some other things, and I'm going through expansion, which means that cash flow is a disaster. But it will stabilize, and then my business will reach cash flow, and then I'll go through growth. But there's no other way how to do it. Right. To become unstable, to become stable. But the point is that I think this is where a lot of creatives don't understand business. And I think one of the biggest problems in the industry is, cool, how do you operate and run your comic project as a business versus as a passion project? And if you want to do a passion project for comics and you say, I don't really care if I make money and I put $6,000 in, have at it. But if you want to run this as a business, it's a little bit different. And you need, cool, if I do some black and white, I would like to do it in color, but cool, how do I get product out there? And who says you can't revisit? Who says you can't remaster a book? Who says you can't redo something later on? I mean, Tom Hutchinson, and I know you've had Tom on your show, he mastered Penny for Your Soul. Right. And I didn't read Penny for Your Soul, but obviously it was good enough that people liked it. But this version that he's releasing and re-releasing is going to be better. And he'll say that too. I mean, he was on my show talking about it. So what is that like for you? No one saying, hey, look, I want to get this out there because I think it's so important. And I think so many creators don't understand that you need to get your product out there and you need to get a bunch of it out there. And black and white might be the answer.
Well, what I would always say is I look at two of the most successful independent creators that I know of, Wendy and Richard Pini. Okay. ElfQuest. That book, or those books, however you want to say it, has been reprinted and reprinted in every format you can imagine. They've been printed as comic books. They've been printed as trades, omnibuses, magazine size, manga size, you name it. Those two, and this is over the course of the last, 40 years. Those guys started, they were printing books when I was a kid. I could go to Forbidden Planet down, I was 12. And I remember picking up the magazine, Star Warp, ElfQuest, when I was like 12. So they've been at it. I've been at it a long time. They've been at it a really long time. And I love it. you know, that like they show that, you know, you can constantly come back and do this. Because look, if you told me ElfQuest has printed, I don't know, let's say 5 million books. Okay, there's 7 billion people on the planet, right? Not everyone's read it. There's new customers and new clients, you know. So reprinting it is not a bad thing, and repurposing, you know, repurposing the material is not bad. You gotta have to go back and reproduce it, you know, because you want to introduce it to as many people as you can. Tall Tales, we printed as a comic book. We've had it printed in anthologies. We've printed them in mini digest size trades, right? And we've sold thousands of those things. Now we're reprinting them again as standard comic size trades, and we're in that process all over again, right? And we're just putting them out there. Why? Because, you know, we're always discovering new fans. You know, new fans are discovering us. You know, so you have to constantly.
It's funny that you mentioned repurposing. So people who are on my YouTube channel and what they're going to learn in June and July is that I'm cutting up a bunch of interview stuff, and I'll take a clip that's a 2-3 minute clip, and I'll throw it out onto YouTube, and I'll reshoot out the interview. Then it links back to the interview. Guess what? I'll make a TikTok out of it. I'll make a YouTube short out of it. And guess what happens? It directs traffic right back to the interview, or that creator now gets exposure and gets 700 views that they didn't have. And it's crazy. I mean, I just had a clip from an interview that I did a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, that got 235 plays. Wow. And that benefits, you know, out of nowhere, you know, and I don't typically do, you know, things like that. But even if you get 20 views, it's now out there and you don't know when it's going to hit. And it's so interesting because it's repurposing content. And just because somebody didn't see something today doesn't mean they won't see it tomorrow. And that's what's crazy, is that I think a lot of creators don't understand that even printing an extra 500 copies of your book could be a big deal, because guess what? There's always somebody's going to want, you know, new content. And I'll be really honest, stuff from the 70s is great. Stuff from the 80s is great. Stuff from the 90s is great. Yeah. And that stuff, you know, DC and Marvel would have reprint a bunch of that stuff. And they have. I mean, The Prey by Chuck Dixon just recently went back into reprinting, maybe 6 months ago. And that's what, like 15, maybe 20 years old. It's just as good, if not better, than most of the stuff out there right now in comics. Just crazy. And
I tell everybody. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go. I speak enough.
No, I was going to say, like, you know, to your point, like Walter Simonson's run on Thor, right? How many times have you heard it? That stuff is as good as anything that's being produced today, right? And it's 40 years old, at least. Because like I said, that's something I read when I was a kid. I was like 10, 11 when it was coming out. John Byrne's run on Fantastic Four. Chris Claremont, John Byrne on X-Men, right? George Perez, Marv Wolfman's there. Teen Titans. Oof. You know?
I mean, what was it? 1980, New Teen Titans hits the shelf. That stuff is amazing. I mean, I have a run starting at issue 50 to like issue 120 through like the whole Teen Titans. And those 70 books, not every one of those books is a home run, but a bunch of them are freaking fantastic. Yeah. And you put that up against, you know, I would be hard to find in the last. Actually, that's not true. The Blackest Night would probably kick New Teen Titans' ass. But that's Blackest Night is a different beast collectively. But Civil War also is a different beast. But those are the only two things that I could think of that rival New Teen Titans in DC. And our competitor, obviously, Civil War is Marvel, but that's my point, is that you never know who's going to read it.
Right. So exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. That stuff can be printed and reprinted over and over again, as long as it's good. Frank Miller's Daredevil run, I consider a high watermark across all comics. You know, I mean, that's the sort of thing. Like, and it's funny, like, I probably reread the series every 2 or 3 years, right? I reread, you know, everything he's done on Daredevil, his Elektra stuff. I think everything between those two characters, Frank Miller for me was flawless and Marvel. And I've like seen some of the stuff that's come out later on. Like I think I read Ed Brubaker did a run on And I love Ed Brubaker's stuff. Like his Captain America one was incredible. The stuff he's doing at Image is great. But this Daredevil is a shadow of what Frank Miller did. It has Kingpin, it has the mob, it has all, ninjas, and it's just like this is all stuff Frank Miller did 40 years ago.
The
right?
only thing that I think compares to Frank Miller with Daredevil was Tim Sale's Joseph Loeb.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
What they did with the colors, I thought that was brilliant. Mm-hmm. But that's also not, I feel, a truly fair comparison, because that was just sort of like a one shot or like a few issues, right. And then they left in a series on what Frank Miller did with Daredevil. But I don't really know anybody who's written Daredevil well. I mean, I know Frank Miller's Daredevil, and I'm not as familiar with Marvel as I am with DC, but even still, it's like, I mean, stuff from like, the 80s, early 90s, even early 2000s was great. I mean, I mean, Dan Slott on Spider-Man leading to issue 700. I mean, those last 50 issues were pretty good. So, one of those things where.
Yeah. I've never read any of Dan Slott's works. I'm not familiar with it. I've heard very good things about his Daredevil run. So, yeah. I mean, eventually.
Superior Spider-Man is his best work. The first 12 issues of Superior Spider-Man, which is after Spider-Man, they ended it the first time after 700 issues, some of Dan Slott's best work and some of Marvel's best work in the last 30 years. Those 12 issues, that first issue, there's a scene where Doc Ock takes over Peter Parker's body. I know, guys, sorry, it's a spoiler. You'll get over it. And
it's been around for 30 years.
The scene is that Doc Ock punches a bad guy who's now Peter Parker, and he almost kills him. He's like, "Oh my God, Peter's been holding back on me all these years." And it's a brilliant scene. It's brilliant writing, and it's so simple writing. And he's like, "Oh my God, Peter has all this strength, and every time he's been punching me, he's been holding back 50%. It's insane. It's because it makes you realize how strong Peter Parker really is.
Right. And what kind of restraint he has.
It's unbelievable. And it's like one or two panels, and it's Dan Slott's best writing that he's ever done in 2 panels or less. And that is what we should all try to write in comics. Whether you like Dan Slott or not, it doesn't matter, because that is the last good Marvel writer. And that is the last brilliant panel that Marvel has done in probably the last 20 years.
Nice.
Which is ludicrous. And I will debate anybody on that topic freely. If anybody would like to debate me on that topic, you know where to find me. It's on Facebook.
Gotcha. I've never read. I've heard of that particular sequence, and I've heard is always good, and it sounds great. But like I said, I haven't read it, so I don't know. The only thing that I can say that I've read over the last few years that was really good was I think Jason Aaron's first 12 issues on Thor were excellent.
Was that female Thor?
No, that was when Thor. No, it was just Thor. Yeah, the female. Jane Foster is Thor. That came later. That was the second arc. But this was the first arc when he fights the God Butcher.
Yeah, I don't know this one. I like Jason Aaron. I really, really, really enjoyed Jane Foster as Thor. I really did. And his work on that, thoroughly enjoyed that. But that's the thing that I've massively read out of Marvel. I don't read Marvel anymore. I don't read DC either.
Yeah, but also Jason, like I said, Jason Brubaker's Captain America run is awesome stuff. That stuff is as good as it gets, in comics. That stuff is really, really good. Really, really up there. Yeah.
But I just think it's super interesting with what's going on in comics. And obviously I think that we are at a very interesting impasse where, I mean, again, cash flow is dictating things. I also think that there has been in which that I think there's also been people who are copying a bunch of other people, and there's people who are forging new territory. And I think we are at also a creative problem where I don't think anybody, people are creating new concepts, but they're also regurgitating a lot of shit. And
Zombies.
yeah. Oh no, there wasn't a show that or a comic book that redefined that age.
Exactly.
Did oh my god, I can't. I'm having somebody on tomorrow night who has sort of a zombie book, and it's a fun book, and I like him. But it's also the idea that I am getting fucking tired of zombies. I am so tired of it.
Yeah, my co-host JD Rosero, he has a zombie book. I mean, I don't really break his chops over it too much, but I probably should.
You should bring up Cap Santiago to him. That's that's a whole joke. There's so many inside jokes that I can make.
Gotcha.
But yeah, but I can't do zombie books. I can't do undead books. I can't do them. I mean, I interview people who are my friends who have those books, but even still, like, I'm not picking up a freaking undead vampire zombie hunting book any fucking time soon. Anybody? I really am done with those.
Gotcha. I mean, unless Mike Mignola is doing it, I'm probably not going to pick it up.
Even with Zenescope with Van Helsing, I'm like, I'm over it, guys. I'm over this point. I'll happily give credit to the writers. I'll happily say it's well written, but it's not for me. Like, you lost me after The Walking Dead ended at 193. I jumped off the train and I said, I'm good. I'm not going to make it to the next stop. Is how that ended. I was perfectly fine when Rick Grimes died. Sorry, guys. Spoiler.
No, not Rick Grimes.
I didn't finish it, Andrew. Why would you do that? wait till I ruin Harry Potter for everybody. Wait till I do that.
Don't tell him Harry dies.
But doesn't he?
I just told you, don't tell him.
Very, very funny moment. I was at one of my my 7th anime panel that I was hosting at a room full of 250 people. And I said, guys, we're gonna have a spoiler here. And Harry Potter came out like 15 years, and everybody knew Dumbledore died. I'm like, Dumbledore dies. The entire room just bursted out laughing. Because it was just so unexpected, and it was brilliant. The way I said it, because everybody's like, what is he going to spoil? And it was just not, I guess, expectations, and it was epic. And so that's my favorite joke now when I have a full room, or there's a few others. But anyway, guys, Harry dies. I just want to let you know. And not Prince Harry. He's still with us. Just I love the royal couple. I love the royal couple, or the ex-royal couple. I don't know what they are anymore. Just brilliant what South Park did with them. Brilliant. So good, so brilliant. But enough about that. Now that I got you and me both in trouble on this, don't worry. You'll only get canceled twice in your life. One of them is with me, I promise.
It's fine. I'm sure I've been canceled like 40 times. I haven't noticed.
Well, if you get canceled and you get recanceled, it restores you back up. It's 2 negatives make a positive.
Right, make a positive. There you
go. I mean, mathematics, guys. It's just math. But I do want to talk about rewards, because you got a bunch of them, but your rewards actually don't have a bunch of them. Your rewards are actually quite simple, which is oddly refreshing. I must say, your Kickstarter is oddly refreshing, because I know people's Kickstarters who have 50 rewards, and I fucking hate it.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much.
10 is too much.
Yeah.
Legitly, 10 rewards. Actually, no, that's not true. 10 is actually kind of perfect. 15 rewards is too much, now that I think about it, because it's too much choice. And so what is that like in making a simple campaign? Because I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make. I would imagine it's easier for fulfillment later on, and it doesn't confuse the hell out of me.
Right. I mean, it's basically, it's just that. It's just to keep it simple, right? It's just like, because what you want to do is just, is say, look, I have the core books, right? You can pick up the older trades. You can pick up, I have a couple of catch up levels, right? I have like an extreme ultimate book level, right? And then I have all the PDF levels, and then you just try to keep it easy, right? I mean, that's just my thing. It's just like, just keep it simple, and then there are add-ons, right? And then if you want to get complicated, that's where you get complicated. You get complicated, like on the add-ons, I have t-shirts, I have pins, I have keychains, and that's where you put on all that other stuff. But you can keep the main page kind of simple. So
yeah, no, I mean, when I do my project and I got a project that might come before it, my idea is that 5 tiers and that's it, because I want it simple.
Tim Vigil, Faust, 2 tiers, right? Hardcover book with sketch, sold out completely. Made over $100,000. Both levels sold out. That's it. Right? What more can you ask for? Simple.
Legitly, I'm going with my book. I'm gonna have 2 covers, a combo pack, a PDF.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't need anything else. It's simple. And then I'm not charging for a signature. Somebody said, Andrew, could you sketch in my book? I don't know why you'd want an Andrew Davis sketch, but sure, I'll happily sketch in everybody's book. If they wanted it, I don't have a problem with that. It'll be fun. Yeah. I can't promise it'll be good artwork, but I could promise I'll give you a sketch for free because it'll be fun. Why wouldn't I want to sketch on people's books? I could draw like a dinosaur. I could draw a stick figure. I could draw like a headless stick figure. It'll be fun. I'll have a good time drawing on like 200 books. It'll be great. I'll pick like different Sharpies. Oh, it'll be great. I'll give people like options. Oh, it'll be a blast. What color do you want on your book? With a purple Sharpie? Oh, it'll be great. It'll be so much fun. But anyway, I digress. I know. I do want to show pictures of what you actually have. And you're gonna tell me which is which because I get confused. But I have this one.
Okay, this is from A Few Inches Taller. So this is the main cover is on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side is the alternative cover.
And then there's this one right here, which I think is.
That's for We Were Just Passing Through. That's the main wrap. That's obviously a wraparound cover, and this is done by Renio Tillis. This is the same artist on both of those.
And then we got this one right here, which is super cool.
This is the cover to Volume 1 of Passing Queens and Making Homes.
And then we got this right here.
That's Volume 2 of Passing Queens and Making Homes, all by Renio Tillis. He did a great job on those. And that's also a wraparound.
And I think that's a similar cover, if not the same cover.
Yeah. This is the alternative cover to A Few Inches Taller. This is by Emmanuel Mannix.
And then we have all this right here.
Yeah. So this is a Renio. This is the first issue cover to on the left-hand side, on the far hand left, that's a Renio Tillis. That's the first issue. That's just the regular cover. The one right next to it, that's Ordith and Oswald. That's the alternative cover. That's by Emmanuel Mannix. And then next to that is the cover to issue 2, regular, and then the cover to the alternative cover, issue 2.
And then we have this, which I think is a different series completely.
Yes, this is from this is a catch-up level. So this is the prior series that I did. This is On the Wings of Deidre, and this is the covers issues 1, 2, and 3, illustrated by Jade Gonzalez.
And obviously, I mean, there's a lot of stuff here.
Oh yeah. There's tons of it.
And then you get all the trades in there. You get obviously issue 3 or volume 3 in here. The ultimate book level, which has everything in it. I think it's got like super limited stuff in there. It's got some other stuff in there. And pretty much if you brand new or you missed anything and you want the super limited stuff and pretty much everything you've done in the last pretty much 5 years. That's
more than that, but it's more like 15 years.
I'm being conservative in everything I say now because it is better to under promise, over deliver.
I mean, that one has a lot of stuff in it, but I also have like PDF levels. Like I have an ultimate, like if you just like to read digital, I have an ultimate PDF level. It got to be. It's funny. I have to do a count, but it keeps growing with every campaign. It grows a little bit more. So, but I'm pretty sure there's 800 or 900 worth of comic pages. There's probably another 600 or 700 pages worth of prose in there as well. So there's a lot of content in that level. So.
Yeah, and you mentioned this earlier, and what is that like? Because once you have a lot of content, you get looked at differently.
Yeah.
You get respected in a certain way, and people tend to take you more seriously. And also, it opens up other doors. I mean, that's how I feel. I almost have 600 interviews. And by the end, before this year is over, I'm going to have 600 plus interviews. And when all of a sudden, I'm like, hey, look, I've been doing this for 10 years and I have almost 600 interviews. I know people who have been doing, this similar for the last 5 years, I have 1,000, but obviously all of a sudden when I'm reaching out to a bigger guest, like, oh shit, you're not new to this anymore. And it helps. And so what is that like for you when you have, 15, 16, 17, 1,800 pages worth of content, and then you walk into an artist or, a writer, or you're at a con, and well, you can, say, hey, look, this is kind of my resume. It's on my table, know?
It's funny. When it comes down to working with other artists, they tend to take you more seriously. They're like, okay, this guy's been in the business for a while. He's done a lot of work. So they know it's like, you're someone to be taken seriously because you're there to do business, right? So they take you more seriously. When it comes down to other creators, if they need advice, depending on the type of advice that you're there to offer, again, they take you more seriously. It's funny, at a convention, it's a little different because when you're dealing with fans, you can overwhelm a fan with having too much stuff on your table. You just go to a table and it's like so much, like your brain just starts to spurt out. You're just like, what am I looking at? This is too much, right? And that's why sometimes at shows, it's actually better to just have a few books rather than more books. Because sometimes it will drive a person. Like some people just won't even stop because you got too much. Whereas sometimes if you just have 2 or 3 books and you can make a little bundle, or they could just buy the one, that's sometimes a little bit better. Because sometimes, you can get that sale that way. But some people, it just depends on the person.
Did you also feel that it also depends on the con? And what I mean by this is that different cons, different areas. Obviously, America is a big country. North Dakota and New York are not the same in any stretch of the imagination. They both have advantages and disadvantages, but what might, the income levels are different in both those areas. I'm not going to say which one has more money. And before anybody think long and hard, and maybe you want to do some research, you might be surprised. But the point that I'm getting at is that a product that might do well in North Dakota might not do well in New York, and vice versa. And so what is that like also where, I think people have to understand where they're going and where they're selling books. And also, I'll throw another thing out there. FlameCon in Brooklyn might have a different crowd than New York Comic-Con does. And that's another thing too, is that maybe having 7 books in New York Comic-Con might be more advantageous than having 3 books at FlameCon in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Well, also you got to consider, what are your costs? At New York Comic-Con, you're going to have a lot of content to get over, because the cost of the table is $1,400 if you're in the small press area, right? So it's $1,400. You got to cover that cost. So you're going to have a lot more material with you. Someplace I've never been to FlameCon, I've heard of it, but that table might be only $200 or $300. So maybe you don't need as much content to cover those costs. So it just depends. And with New York Comic-Con, you have a massive amount of people coming through, right? And then one of the things I really liked was they limit the amount of 4-day passes they give out. So then that way you have more 1-day passes. And what I like about that is that it forces a person, like if you only got 1 day at the show, it forces you to relieve yourself of all your expendable cash, right? You're gonna go in there. You're like, well, I got X. Like, think of it like this: if you're going to a show for 4 days, you're giving yourself a budget, right? Let's say your budget's $1,000 or $200, whatever it is, right? But that budget probably is not going to change if you go for 1 day or 4 days. So if you go for 1 day and your budget's still the same, you're going to blow it all in 1 day, right? So instead of having that same person there all weekend, you have different people there blowing their budgets. And that's the one thing that's why I've heard the last few years have been great at that show, because people would just come in and they would just like, all right, let's just get as much stuff as we can, which I always thought was great.
I've been to New York Comic Con once. I haven't been in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I am personally just not a fan of it. It is a very, very, very packed con, and it is not exactly for me.
Have you been to San Diego?
I haven't been to San Diego. I thoroughly enjoyed going to AwesomeCon. I've been to OpenCon. I've been to a few others. I've been to WinterCon. I prefer more space. New York is just packed. I've been once to Anime NYC, and that was packed. But it wasn't as bad as New York Comic Con. And when I went to New York Comic Con, it was just not for me. And I am not a tight guy. It also doesn't work well when you physically don't walk well. It's not easy. Is the point. And so it's not a very nicest way I could put it, accessible con for certain people. And it's a shame, but I don't think it's Reed Pop's fault. I think it's just the way, I guess, the cookie crumbles, for lack of a better word. Because the Javits Center is not a good convention center.
Well, it's not a big one, but I mean San Diego, which I did for like a few years running, but San Diego's massive, right? But it is also packed. Like it would take you a good 30-40 minutes to walk from one end of the convention center to the other without any real traffic. Now, when it's packed, it take you an hour and a half to get to the other end. You just walk, and it's just like, it just take you forever. Like I would walk away from the table and go buy stuff and like get a signature for Mike Mignola. I'd always go, pick up his art book or whatever. And Daphne would call me. She was like, get back to the table. We got fans. They need signatures. I'm like, oh. I have to like rush it. Like,
it's not for me. I would rather do AwesomeCon. I would rather do a con that has a lot more space. And
I got you, man. I got you.
It's a choice, and I'm very honest about it. Where it's not Reed Pop's fault. I'm not faulting them. Just on an accessibility level, it does not work. It is a disaster. And I mean, I'm not interested in torturing myself for the sake of New York Comic Con. And also, I haven't been to a con in almost 4 years, and I don't know if I'm going to come back. I don't know, because to be quite honest, I don't miss it. I don't miss it at all. My business is doing better than ever, and I haven't been to a con, which is odd. Where I live online and I can get everything I want on the internet, and I mean, it's crazy. I'm making more money not going to cons than when I was going. And I have more access than I've ever had to anything I ever want to buy and flip and sell. And I have more access to actually getting my own merch and bringing in my own exclusives, which is crazy too. So, I don't know if I need it. That's the other thing too, is that as somebody in this space, I don't know if I need it. And that's what's crazy.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's funny. Like Daphne and I haven't done many cons over the last few years. We've been doing WinterCon is one of the shows we normally do. We do Eternal Con, right? Because they're local. We're probably going to start trying to get into New York Comic Con because it's local. Because she was talking about going to San Diego, and I'm like, well, for what it's going to cost us to go to San Diego, we just might as well do New York, right? So. Because I'd rather, if I'm going out to California, I just want to go on vacation. I don't want to worry about a convention. I just want to go, enjoy myself. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you just go and we'll see what happens.
It's weird for me too, and I'm very honest. I have more access to people than I've ever had before, and I haven't produced a book. I have more access to voice actors, more access to wrestlers, more access to comic people, more access to celebrities to some degree. And it's crazy. And the only reason how I've gotten it is I've legitimately been doing this forever. And I just ask and keep asking, and then you get one at a time. And I'll be very honest, the best thing that's ever happened to me was COVID.
Mhm.
COVID has forced me to network through my show. And because of that, I know way more people, and a lot of people know a lot of other people, and people for the most part want to help people.
Yeah.
So there you go. But again, I'm not saying I won't come back to cons, but at this stage, I mean, I don't miss them and I don't need them. So it's crazy. It's weird. And I might be the outlier and I'm perfectly fine. But I also understand that if your business is rooted in that, more power to you. I'm not anti-convention. It's just maybe not for me. But at the current stage, and I'm perfectly fine not doing that. So
Yeah. I have friends that they do show after show after show after show, and it's just like they're on the road like 20 weeks out of the year, if not more. And I'm just like, I'm like, no, I can't do it. And that was stuff I did when I was, in my 30s. We would do like maybe a show every other week.
It's also the fact that I have a day job, and that's the other thing too, is that I have a day job, and I have a side business that does well, but it doesn't replace my day job's income. And that's the other thing too, is that I understand that I have healthcare and a 401k, and I've run the math. And that's the other thing too that I think a lot of people don't understand, is that I've run the math on this, and my 401k, along with my income, along with my eBay business that I run, is going to allow me to retire comfortably. And so why would I go and want to be on the road 20 weeks out of the year, risk my day job, be tired when I get back home Sunday night at 7:00, or have to use personal days and not be able to go on vacation because I only get 10 days a year? Like, is it really worth it? Or do I want to take 5 days off and hang out on a beach?
Exactly.
There you go. But that's just me. Again, I'm not going to tell anybody how to live their life. That's not my job. If you want to go on the road 20 weeks out of the year, be my guest. More power to you.
Yeah, I mean, for some guys, it's a business. I mean, like, like my buddy, I have a couple of friends that's how they make their nut for the year, just doing shows. So I'm like, listen, more power to you. Go for it. Do what you got to do. Go hit that hustle.
Again, for me, even if it was lucrative like that, I don't think I'd want to do it. I think it would kill me. I really think it would be. I think I would collapse from exhaustion. And I'm not Eddie Guerrero, and I don't want to be Eddie Guerrero anytime soon. Guy died from exhaustion. And there's a reason why, because it's exhausting probably to do a show every week or every other week. I mean, it's a lot, right? I mean, what? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. When you do a con, how many hours are you working that weekend?
Working the whole weekend. Other than, the time you hit your hotel room and take a shower and probably nap for a couple hours. That's it. But you're working the whole weekend, I mean, you're driving out there, you anytime you're doing anything, you're working, so you're working the whole damn weekend. And sometimes the shows are 10, 12 hours a day on the show floor, I mean, it's fun, but it can be tiring. But that's why, like I said, I'm trying to, like, if we do 2 or 3 shows a year, I'm fine with that. I don't have to do more than that. That's what we have Kickstarter for. We have our websites and all that other stuff, to sell stuff and reach people.
Yeah, no, exactly. This is exactly how I feel. That's why I love eBay. I love eBay. eBay is global, and I sell almost exclusively on eBay for that reason. And I feel just fine. And it's wonderful. And again, I love it. I love it, and it works. And it's freaking awesome. But anyway, I digress. Obviously, you got a lot of rewards. You got keychains. You got everything in that regard. And obviously, you've been doing this stuff for 3, almost 4 decades now.
Yeah.
Way too long, man. It's just you've been doing this longer than I've been alive.
Yeah, I started self-publishing in 92.
Again, longer than I've been alive.
Yeah, but listen, man, it's fun though. Like I do the day job, and it's just a job, you know? It's just a job. It doesn't matter how much money I make there. It's just a job. I come home to do the real job, right? And that's comics, you know. And it doesn't matter if it's Tall Tales, Oswald Chronicles, Dreamweavers, American Justice. It doesn't matter what it is. You understand? It's just fun to just be able to do it, you know. And that's my view on it. It's just like do your day job, do what you got to do, and just come home and then you relax and you know you do this because I find it for me the most satisfying thing I do.
It's interesting. That's interesting. I find my eBay stuff and what I do and when I find good deals and when I sell things to just be very rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
I find it that when I make a good purchase and I make a good sale and I make a really good exit, that I find it so rewarding because it's validation. It's instant validation.
Right.
Because it's I'm buying it in for X and then I'm selling it for 4 times what I bought it for. It's instant validation and verification and response. And it's so nice because I don't know about how you feel, but I get criticized collectively on a lot of shit in my life.
Okay.
And so it's nice when you're not getting criticized
Right.
on a lot of stuff and that people aren't criticizing you, people aren't questioning you, people aren't trying to challenge you, you know.
Mhm.
It's nice when you're like, cool, the free market decides something and the free market rewards you. And that's how I feel about what I do. And I would imagine when you're doing a comic and somebody buys your comic, somebody's like, yo, you know, you get funded. And if you get funded by 200%, you're like, cool, people want this and people want to see it and people actually want to support it. And it's almost validation and verification saying, hey, I'm on the right path.
Yeah. You know, I mean, yeah. I mean, listen, I mean, exactly. I can't even add to that. You know, it's exactly where you need to be. You know, you have to find that spot where you're comfortable and you're happy, you know.
And then I got one more question for you, and then I'm gonna let you self promote. And it's a very important question.
Go for it.
How do you think the Knicks are gonna do?
The Knicks, dude. I'm from New York, right? The Knicks. I just cry. You know, what can you do but cry for them every year? You know, it's a lament. You know,
I mean, it's hard to watch them right now too. I mean, physically with the MSG thing taking off the cable.
You know, it's fine. I'll be honest, I'm not really a sports guy. So, the only sports I watch is UFC. That's it. I don't watch football. I've never been interested in basketball, any of those. The stick and ball sports just don't do it for me.
I am a baseball fan, and I'm very excited at the New York Mets. I'm very excited for Scherzer, Verlander. This new Japanese pitcher is really good, and I'm excited for it. And it's going to be a blast. And the Yankees are good. You know, I mean, their shortstop is slaying dragons. I mean, he's being touted as the next Jeter, which is ludicrous, which is awesome. But I haven't watched the Knicks in forever. I just don't know how they're going to do. And I think I mean, my understanding is that they're in the playoffs, right?
I don't know.
I don't know either. It's like
I don't know. You know, if they are, good for them. You know, like I said, maybe they'll finally turn it around for them.
I mean, maybe they just need to bring Patrick Ewing back, and they could do something with that.
Jesus Christ, I've heard that name in like 15 years.
He's a good coach apparently. He's a great coach apparently. In college basketball right now.
Okay, well, that's cool.
And then I guess since we're on UFC, how do you feel about that Endeavor deal?
I you know, it's interesting. I mean, what I do hope is that they can finally extend insurance to all the fighters. You know, because that's one of their constant complaints is like, I guess if they get hurt during a fight, they're covered, right? But outside of the fight, like if something happens in the gym, they're not covered. So, you know, it'd be nice if they would extend that to them. And then hopefully, you know, the fighters will get a little bit more insurance and hopefully a little bit more pay. But that, you know, I'm just a fan. I don't even, you know, that's their fight to, you know,
I think, I mean, my take on it, and I'm very honest with this. I think it's good. I think it's good because I think it's securing media rights, and I think that both those companies, WWE and UFC, are going to get more money for their media, and I think that both those companies are undervalued significantly, which is good because when a company's value goes up and more people are able to watch it and then get exposure to it, that's good for everybody because people get paid more. Companies do better, investors get rewarded, and I think UFC, I think they're making like 300 or 400 million a year just on ESPN alone, just in some like weird rights per year. I honestly think that that's undervalued for what UFC is. WWE brings in $500,000, and WWE I think is also undervalued every year between Fox, Peacock, and USA Network. I think it's undervalued tremendously as well, and so I think it's good. Because I think both those companies deserve to be paid a hell of a lot more money with it. Because I think they're massively valued, and I want companies that are valued. I want them to be treated fairly and valued appropriately. But that's just my take on it. But again, if anybody wants to talk about that with me and that whole deal, I love talking about that. And yes, I am a shareholder in WWE and in Denver. So very excited, more than happy to talk about that with anybody, anytime. And I can tell you exactly how to play that trade-off. Exactly. And how it's going to go. And we'll see how right I am, which I always am. So there you go. On things like this. But anyway, I digress. Now that people are going to be hitting me up and say, cool, Andrew, let's talk about it. Seriously, I'll talk to anybody about that. I'm very excited for this. I'm very bullish. In case anybody hasn't known. And like Michael Jordan bullish.
Nice.
Yes. You should see Shaq and me go at it. No. I prefer Do You Poo, but that's not the point. Great cover. The basketball covers on Marat Michaels' stuff is brilliant on that. But anyway, I do want to give you a chance to self-promote now that I've caused controversy, as I always do on my show, and you might be canceled. I don't know. It's all right. All right.
It's okay.
It's a unique club. It's a unique club, but where can people find you? Where can people follow you? Where can people support the Kickstarter? All that fun stuff. Where can people, if they don't see something on the Kickstarter, where can they get it? Because you have other stuff that's not on this Kickstarter, I think, but I think it's on a website or somewhere else, or they hit you up, or maybe they can find you at a con.
All right. So first place to go to is the Oswald Chronicles, or you can check me out on Facebook. Facebook, plenty of links heading on over to the Kickstarter, the OswaldChronicles.com. There's TallTalesOnline.com. There's also DreamWeaverPress.com. So either one of those will take you to those family of sites. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those different places. DeviantArt, all under JD Calderon. And Sunday nights, I have my own talk show thing that I do called Indie Comics Explained, talking on a Sunday nights, and we just basically talk about the business of comics. So every Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. I would say most weekends, because I do like to take the occasional Sunday off. But check out the Oswald Chronicles. That's where you can find all that stuff.
Yeah, and I'm just going to keep saying it, and I've been saying it for almost 4 years, and I'm going to keep saying it. You have to support indie, and what that means is you have to back people's campaigns when they're active. You have to check out what they're doing. You actually have to, as I stated already, I'm going to say it again, you have to back it, and you have to share it out, because it makes a huge difference when you share it out. And it's very important. And you don't know who's going to look at it. You know who's going to see it, tweeting it out, Instagram sharing, liking, and then even going beyond that, you need to follow people on social media. You need to like their social media. Even saying hi to somebody is always helpful. Say, hey, I really like your book. I like what you're doing. If you have a show, asking somebody to be on your show, very helpful. All that stuff is a game changer. And even going further, if you don't like something on their Kickstarter and it's not on their Kickstarter, but you like another one of their books, you should go and buy their book if you already haven't bought their book, because that also helps. And in many ways is a game changer, because it indirectly supports what they're doing and helps them to continue. And if you like what you see and you want to see more of it, there you go. You need to support it. Also, go check out Paul Gomez's prequel to Aurora. Great thing. It's on Kickstarter right now. Obviously, I'm a backer of that book, and I'm super excited for it. So go check that thing out. It's going to be a good one. I don't know where we're at, but hopefully, he's going to get funded, and he's going to deliver you your book. So if you are sick and tired of people not delivering you books, Paul will deliver you your book and will get you your book. And I think the physical copy with shipping is less than $20, which is pretty good on Kickstarter. I think it's $10. I think it's like $8 shipping. So it's not too bad last time I checked. It's pretty reasonable. And then as far as I'm concerned, obviously all my social media is Pop Anime Comics on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. It's Pop Anime Comics. You can check me out there. I have almost 600 interviews out there. A lot of them are on YouTube. And I promise you there's an interview for everyone on YouTube. So if you just want to be entertained, I can't promise you'll get smarter, but I can promise you'll be entertained on my YouTube channel. And there's a bunch of shorts, bunch of short clips, and a lot of fun stuff is out there. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, and you might get addicted to my YouTube channel. But don't worry. It causes no harm except that you will smile and potentially laugh. But beyond that, I also have my ad rates are up there, and a variety of other things are up there as well. In the description down below to the side or up above, I'm not exactly sure where it is. And all that stuff is out there. And I do have a t-shirt on Redbubble that you could pick up, which is also in the description. So that's everything that I got. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
All right. So thank you, Andrew, for having me here. This was awesome. We've done this once before. This is just awesome. Like I said, it was just cool. And I always like to end with this. Please go out and read more indie comics, especially mine. So have a good night, guys. Thank you.
And that is a